Yeah, what's up, Casey?
Hey, how's it going? We're live.
We're live. I'm very excited. Every time I talk to you, I learn a bunch of new stuff. So I can't wait for this one.
Yeah, grateful for you having me on, and I think we're going to unpack some stuff that will hopefully be really valuable for folks. So looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah. Well, I suggest we wait for let's say 2-3 minutes more to see who else is coming, and then we can jump into it. In the meantime, hi everyone. Hi. Thanks for joining the webinar. We're really wondering what industries are you coming from? What kind of businesses are you coming from? Casey has a lot of knowledge to share, and if you can indicate, um, yeah, your business or industry, is going to be really, really way more valuable during the presentation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think there's so much nuance when we talk about best practices within the industry. So we're going to talk about both kind of frameworks and how to approach A/B testing, but we're also going to get into specific A/B tests and look at what is winning, what is losing, and what we can extrapolate. And as we do that, I think just like an important overall framework is everything is specialized to context. The context is incredibly important about where your traffic comes from, where you're located, what industries you're in. So the more nuance that we have there, there's a ton of utility for us to kind of tailor some of those conversations and give you guys that sense of like this insight is really applicable if you're in this world, may or may not be if you're in this other world. So great to see we got a spattering of we got folks in SaaS, we have agencies, sports federation, love it.
Yeah, to the point that you were saying, every time we're recruiting marketers, we're always looking at their backgrounds because people that come from e-commerce or are very different from the people that come from B2B SaaS. And actually, the industries and the marketing strategies are so different that they're incomparable, actually. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I don't want to give the wrong impression. We can always learn from other spaces, and I think B2B SaaS, can absolutely draw insights from other worlds. But 100%, I agree with you. The worlds of e-com and the worlds of B2B SaaS, as two foiling examples, have a lot of different best practices at a high level.
Mm.
So great. Thank you for everyone weighing in. And Iliya, should we just get ready to kind of hop into here? Let's get people to the good stuff.
Yeah, let's do it. Um, I'll start. Hi, everyone. My name is Iliya. I'm co-founder and CEO of team-gpt, a collaborative platform for working with AI models focusing on marketing teams. I'm here with Casey Hill, one of the most influential people on LinkedIn from my perspective. I really love everything he posts, and I'm super excited to have him here. Thanks, Casey, for joining.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, guys. I've been in the B2B SaaS world for about 15 years, close to 15 years now. I'm the CMO over at a company called DoWhatWorks. Started there a couple months ago, and it's kind of been a dream scenario from a content perspective. We have a technology and platform that can see any split test from any brand on the web. And so, as a byproduct of that, it's been pretty incredible because we can share real tests that are getting done and getting performed out there in the ecosystem, and we can all learn from those insights and those tests. So I'm really excited to help kind of unpack how the A/B testing ecosystem is evolving and changing. Because just like the AI world, there's some crazy changes that are happening all the time in these industries. So I'm looking forward to getting into it.
But before we get into it, I want to tell the story of how I met you for the first time. You didn't know who I am, but there was this community, Superpath. Do you remember?
Vaguely, yeah.
Probably. Yeah. So it was this community on Slack, and it was full of marketers. It was quite silent everywhere. And then there was this guy Casey Hill every day posting, showing up, posting some great value. There were these long posts, and they were packed with value. And I'm like, who is this guy? Why is he doing it? And then I saw you on LinkedIn, and then I saw you on Reddit, and then I started seeing you everywhere across the board, Quora maybe. And it was so fascinating to me how you were posting quite often. You take one post and you were disseminating it across multiple media, but you were ever so slightly adjusting it for the different media, and they were all performing really well. And I kind of took this for myself, and I started doing it as well. And it was really, really kind of inspiring and forming my mentality about doing marketing. So this is how I met you. And then let's say, I don't know, 3-5 years later, we started chatting, and we've been collaborating a bit since then.
Yeah,
This
absolutely. Yeah, it's awesome. I've been working in a lot of communities through the years, and definitely am bullish. We could do a whole separate webinar around social channels and kind of what to do there. Right now, we drive about 30% of our pipeline directly from top end socials on LinkedIn. I pull in about 1 million views a week right now, and so that's a great channel to be able to disseminate insights. But let's get into the A/B testing part of the program if that works for you.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
So I think one of the things that I want to start with is a little bit on kind of like the general philosophy or the framework of how we approach A/B testing. So one of the things that's important to note, Optimizely, which is a company that does a lot of like split testing type stuff, they produced a report that said only 10% of split tests that are being done are beating the controls. And looking extensively at the data in our ecosystem, we find that's true. So the first thing we have to start with is there's a challenge in A/B testing, which is that a lot of the tests that are being run are not winning. And I think there's a couple fundamental reasons for that. The first is that when people think about A/B testing, it often is a couple people get together, they throw out their opinions. I like this thing. I like this thing. Hey, did you see this competitor over here? They have this cool element on their site. Let's do this. And there's a lot of guesswork. And it starts very much from this kind of ad hoc perspective. And so one of the first things that I think is really important when you're thinking about split testing is to have a very focused intent, very focused goal. And so what I mean by that is when you look at, say, your pricing page, don't approach your pricing page and say, hey, our conversion is at X percentage and we want to get a lift. It's not high enough. So let's go look at what this competitor does, and let's go see if we can steal it and put it here. And then let's go maybe add this other thing. That's being done in a way that isn't focused on a unified reason by which all the changes are happening. So instead, let me propose an alternative. You look at heat mapping on your page and you see that a lot of people, they start on the fold, but then they're scrolling down quickly. They don't stick on the fold. They scroll down quickly. They scroll down. They go all the way down your page. When I see that, my thought is there's something that they want that they're not getting, right? They're searching for it. They didn't find it in the first fold. Now they're going down to the next element. Now they're going down to the next element. So if that is what I observe, I'm going to build a series of tests. Everything that I look at, everything that I want to try to optimize or test, I want to boil back to this simple principle of how do I get people to stay more on the fold? How do I get them to engage in that first frame with my pricing plans? So I'm going to be implementing changes, like maybe I'm adding some reassurance text because maybe they're trying to find out, is the trial actually free? Is there a credit card required? They want to know that, and they don't know that right now. Maybe they're trying to figure out like which one of these plans makes sense for me. They're trying to get a little affinity, and they're not getting that right now. I'm going to implement a series of changes that all are tied back to that unified variable set. Unified variable set essentially means that the changes we make are tied to a single objective that is based on the core problem. So I just wanted to set that stage a little bit.
Yeah. Can you give an example? Like, can you give a very simple test just to illustrate this point?
Yeah. So an example to illustrate that point.
You can show one. Do you want to show one?
Yeah, sure. Here, let me toggle over. So I'll show a test here for folks.
Okay.
So this is a test. This is a test from Canva. And there's a couple points that we can kind of unpack around this test. And if anyone in the comments wants to weigh in, the great part about this is we can have this be really interactive. You don't see the winner yet. So they ran a split test. And the split test in this case was around the sign-up registration process. And they tested having a plain background or having a stylized visual illustrated background. So I'll open it up to chat if you guys want to, kind of weigh in and let me know which version you guys think won. I'm curious to see what you think. But
as people are trying as people are answering, I want to ask you, what is the objective of this test? So when you look at this test, it is there. What are they testing? Is it like the percentage of people that signed up after they came to the page? Is this the objective?
No. So that's an important clarification. So like we can have quantitative objectives, right? We can have a quantitative objective, which obviously like when we change our sign up process, we want to get more signups. That's kind of like an endpoint. But what I was kind of talking about earlier when we think about A/B testing philosophy is you want changes that are based on a specific problem. Let's say that as an example for Canva feels like they aren't translating their brand. Like people aren't getting the sense of the Canva brand when they go to do something. And that is
Okay.
that is showing up in surveys, that's showing up in these different places. And so when they think about changes, maybe they're saying, how do we, as a company tied to illustration and design, how do we make sure that that is what is showing in these tests? And of course, we're tying it back to the quantitative objective. It has to, whether something like this, it has to increase signups, the pricing page stuff we were talking about earlier. We need to get more free trials. We need to get more people on the right plans that we want them to get on. But the idea is we have to get beyond just that quantitative layer to saying, why are we designing the test in the way we're designing it? What does that look like? And so we have a lot of people kind of going in, control test. A lot of people seem to be arguing they think it's the test. And here we go. It is actually the control. So surprise,
No.
surprise, surprise, surprise. It is actually not the plain version. And this is where it's so interesting when you study not only individual tests, but when you study aggregate trends, oftentimes it challenges assumptions that we have. Things that are common practice, like having a logo bar on your website, or the case of, simplicity. People talk about all the time. It's all just about simplicity, 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 simplicity. What I'm going to argue over the course of this webinar is that that's actually the wrong word. It's about clarity. It's about expectation to reality match. It is the clarity and not the simplicity in and of itself that makes tests effective. But in this case, I think that Canva, who wanted to represent more of their brand image, by bringing that in, it felt more authentic to a platform that is about design, to have those design components. So that's one side, but I'm going to push this a little farther. We actually have some really cool data there's a guy named Tom Orbach who ran an extensive study. He's the head of growth at Wiz, which just got acquired, by the way, by Google. If it goes through, we'll see, one of the largest acquisitions that we've seen recently, $30+ billion or something. Anyway,
it's one of the largest SaaS acquisitions ever, if not the largest. It's the fastest for sure. Yeah.
Wiz is a remarkable company, remarkable story, but he ran an extensive test also on this, and he compared plain backgrounds versus blurred product backgrounds for SaaS products. So you can look at this on Zendesk. You can look at tons of different platforms. He specifically looked at MyCase, MineOS, and Grin, and he found a 25 to 95% lift. You guys, we can link this to folks afterwards in the show notes if people want to read his case studies. It's on his blog, Marketing Ideas. But it's remarkable how much stronger the blurred product background was. So again, a kind of non-intuitive learning. We would think simplicity, keep it clean, keep it basic. And yet when we look at the data, we're finding something different, which is that there's this visual component. In the blurred product background example, there's probably something to you feel like you're about to get into the experience. So someone is like almost teasing the experience before, and it's like, let me finish these boxes so I can get into it. There's a lot of psychology. And again, like I said, nuance. This is tied to B2B SaaS, right? But it's cool to see that data.
I have run a similar test twice before, and blurred is always the best. And my own interpretation of this is that it leads to a higher activation, because when you show a full platform in the background and they enter it and it's kind of empty, they kind of want to get more activated because it's already in their mind how the platform could look like. And to me, it's so immersive that now whenever we do, I'm like, where is the blurred background of the platform when they sign up? Like, it's really needed. So I love this one.
Yeah, it's just a cool thing. It's a cool thing to think about. And when we're talking about, tests, oftentimes it's our homepage, it's our pricing pages, it's our trial flows that are some of the most impactful pages for us first to tackle, because they have the closest relationship with revenue, right? And so it's really, really valuable for us to learn what's working on stuff like this, a registration flow, a sign-up flow, a free trial flow, because these are small tweaks that can have really, really big consequences. And one thing I'll just say, a quick anecdote, won't go down the rabbit hole here, but I launched an e-commerce company in 2018, and I left over $200,000 on the table because I wasn't A/B testing, and I did not have a way beyond credit card for people to pay. And what I discovered was that in foreign markets outside of the United States, it was a huge barrier. And when we added the ability to pay via PayPal, pay via Venmo, Apple Pay, all these different alternative ways to pay, overnight we saw international conversion surge for our product. And so that's an example where if I had been A/B testing, I would have caught that way earlier. And if I would have been looking at data, if I would have been understanding the industry and space, I would have also caught that. But one other thing I want to tell people really quickly as a cautionary note, one of the common ways that people approach what to test is they just hop onto their competitors' websites. And I want to pause for a moment and tell you why you need to be very, very careful about doing that based on examples we've seen firsthand in many cases. So understand that these websites that you hop on to get comps, they're also A/B testing. So if you arrive on a Wednesday and they're running a 5% test, some crazy test, like we're just going to run it to 5% of our traffic. 95% is version A, 5% is this crazy version B. Well, you hop on their website and you see version B and you're like, wow, this is a big company. They must be doing things right. And you copy a losing variant. We actually saw a big competitor to Monday.com. I'm not going to throw them under the bus and say who they were, but they copied an element from Monday.com that was totally losing, and it was a small percentage of their test. And they illustrated this point firsthand. And of course, they implemented it. And then you saw a couple months back, they totally rolled it back because it was not a winning element. So I will tell folks that you want to be cautious to just blindly, we do want to look at data, and we'll talk about a couple ways we can do that in a meaningful way, but you want to be very cautious about blindly copying competitors when you don't know if that's the winning or losing variant of their test.
Casey, can I ask you, how do you know? How do you know this? So how do you know which one is losing, which one is winning?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. So at DoWhatWorks, we basically have a technology. We have a patented technology that starts with a public web crawl that looks at public data. So when someone runs a split test, there's actually public. It's actually public data. You can look at those variants and you can understand that there's a test being done. We have a technology that then detects what specifically is being tested on the page. And then we have a human research team that monitors those tests and ultimately sees what version the brand favors, what version the brand sticks with. And then we add that into a massive database with tens of thousands of tests so we can look at those trends in aggregate. So our technology essentially allows us to look at those tests, see what versions the brands run with, and then ultimately look at that at scale. So now we can look at 1,200 different signup flows. And if we see a very strong signal, like of those 1,200 tests, 950 of them go direction A, that's a good signal that tells us like, okay, that seems to be a best practice for this specific industry in this specific context.
Okay, makes a lot of sense because I've always wondered what wins, and yeah, okay. Thanks, Casey. Do
That's
you
what
have
we're about at
another one?
DoWhatWorks. Yeah,
Do you
yeah,
have
let's
another
do.
one? Let's do one more.
I do. Yeah. So here's another one. So competitors, really interesting question that folks have, which is how do you talk about competitors? Where do you talk about competitors? Just as a little explanation in case it's not apparent, because I know this image is small. The test that Square ran is either just their pricing tables, which you can see are identical on the left and right version, or above it in the right version, they have a grid that if you click that little plus button, so it's not displayed by default, but if you click that little plus button, it pops out Square versus their top two competitors, and you get that kind of classic, we do these things, the competitors don't do these things. So what do you guys think won for Square? Do you think it was just the pricing table by itself, or do you think it was the pricing table with the competitor mentions of how Square stacks up against other tools? I'll give a
Without
moment if people in.
Yeah, without biasing people, to me, I'm getting this question every time I'm trying to sell our software. I'm getting a question by the users. How do we compare with the competitors? And I've been thinking about ways to insert this into the user journey somehow on the website. And we have all these competitor pages. And the question for me is, you come to our website. How do I show you how amazing we are and we're better than the others without putting too much weight on the competitors at the same time? So my guess is variant where they go on the pricing page and they can compare it there and make the decision.
Yeah. All right. So everyone's kind of weighed in. Boom. It was the
No.
no competitors. It was the no competitors. And you guys can also, for a lot of these tests, you guys can feel free to go to these websites and you can see kind of the current versions as they have displayed. But I think that pricing or comparison content is really, really tricky. There's a couple things I'll say about this at a high level. The first is I think that when it comes to a pricing page, you want to be very careful about anything that distracts from the core thing that you want people to do. Pricing page is like high intent, bottom of funnel, right? And so you want to make sure that you're not doing anything that obstructs or blocks. One of the reasons I think this might have lost specifically is I can imagine Square is a very known name, right? Square has a lot of name recognition. There's a very fair chance that someone who clicks on that grid might now be educated about the competitors that they should be paying attention to. They might only have known about Square. So there's something to the size of your brand, right? Are you a known brand? Are you the big incumbent? Are you a small player? If you're a big incumbent and you're spending time educating people about even other big incumbents, you might be doing yourself a disservice by they're like, oh, thanks for telling us this. And now they go pop over to those other two competitors. But the other thing I want to say, which is even, I think, potentially more important, is people are very, very distrustful of your graph that says we do everything and our competitors are missing all these key things and they suck. That's what most competitor grids look like. All of us have experienced that feeling of like you look in and you just don't believe it. Like you find it not to be a credible representation. It feels disingenuous. You know the brand's just going to hype up themselves. So there's a lack of trust. There's a couple companies I recommend folks to check out. There's a company called Avoma. And Avoma actually is an example of a company that I think does really good they did really good competitor comparisons where they really go deep and they give the other tools their flowers. They do one against like Avoma versus like Zoom, Zoom something. Like there's like 3 that are mentioned. But the core principle is if you are going to talk about competitors, you need to do it in a way that doesn't feel disingenuous, dismissive. Like you need to quote unquote give flowers to what they're really good at. And don't try to have it in a way that just feels very non-reliable or unrealistic. The second part I would say, based on this learning and based on data we've seen, is I would be very, very careful about mentioning competitors on your pricing page. I think this is a layer back. I think you need to look at having specific assets on a higher level and assume once they get to the pricing page, they're just looking for clarifications around your specific offering. Is the price seem right? Is the features that I need seem right? Don't do things that are going to distract from them finding their answers or insights that are going to leave them to have more time to consider versus moving forward.
Yeah, I feel so bad about betting on talking about the competitors on pricing page. So definitely homepage and pricing page are, to me, the 2 most important pages on the website. And pricing page is definitely, bottom of the funnel compared to homepage, especially. So they come in, they check you out, they go to the pricing page. You need to convert them there. But my question to you, Casey, is so when I'm doing these A/B tests, like when do I start A/B testing? Because if I have like 10 people on my website, 10 people visit my website, and 5 of them click, 5 of them leave, this is not significant. This doesn't make sense as a test, right? When does it make sense to start A/B testing as a
Yeah.
company?
That's a really great question. I mean, so I can tell you kind of outside of here, you'll see a lot of different research that kind of says, hey, you need at least 5,000 hits a month. Like they'll throw out a couple different baseline numbers of where you need to get significance. Part of what I think about is a little bit different. I've worked for a lot of startups in my life. And what I found with startups is that you tend to have very erratic traffic a lot of the times. You have very low traffic and then you do a specific promotion and it really lands, or you get featured in some big thing and it really lands, you see a spike, then it comes down, then you see a spike, and then it comes down, and then you see a spike. If you're in a mode where your traffic sources are very unreliable, then I think you need to make sure that you have at least a baseline that is sufficient. Otherwise, part of the challenge that happens is the level of intent of people coming could be completely different if they come from, say, a very focused webinar, or if they come from a viral social media post that wasn't even really about your product, but they're like, who is this guy? I'm curious. And they click in, right? And so the signal and what those people do is going to be totally different. So we need to be a little bit cautious. So if we want to throw out a number We can choose some of the baseline numbers that get thrown out there, which is that you need like a couple thousand traffic hits to be meaningful. But what I would say is more important is, do you have a steady baseline, right, that comes from a reliable source? Hey, our SEO is providing 2,500 hits per month. And then we have times where we go to 10,000. We have times where we are totally just at our baseline and it's up and down. But that 2,500, because it's consistent, I'm actually okay to run an A/B test because I feel like I'm going to be able to get meaningful signal from that, right? I think if you have pages that are like super, super tiny, like you're getting 10 views to a certain page, it's going to be tough for you to really get meaningful signal from running an A/B test. So it might be a kind of situation where you want to continue to optimize, continue to make common sense, good decisions of cleaning up your typography, thinking about your white space and composition, modernizing your visuals. There's lots of things that I think we can look at and we can just be like, we know that this is going to be a good best practice, right? To make a cleaner user interface. But when you're thinking about changes that we've been talking about here, which is like, should I have an extra button here, an extra section here? Should I talk about competitors here? Should I do this, this, and this? You do want to have a little bit of a traffic baseline is my kind of take.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, of course. But the way I think about it is I always think about it in terms of conversions. So I agree with the baseline completely. And but in terms of conversions, I would always think about, can I get to, let's say, X conversions? To me, it's about 100 conversions for a period of time. Because if your conversion is, let's say, to go on the website and then buy the software after a 2-week trial, this is a very hard conversion, right? So it's going to take them 2-week trial, a lot of time, consideration. There's so many things changing, and especially in the beginning, if you're not Square but you're just starting out, so many things are changing anyways, that this test is so polluted in every way possible. So I would really say in the beginning, A/B testing doesn't make too much sense for when you're starting your business. Focus on the fundamentals, get to these baselines, whether it's SEO, whether it's some social, whether it's even cold outreach. If you can do it right and you can consistently bring traffic, and once you do, this is the time to start thinking about these optimizations.
Yeah.
Casey, I lost you. I don't know if it's my internet or yours.
Oh, I can see you. Are you able to hear me still?
Yes, I can hear you, but with a deteriorating connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
It's
I can
good.
hear you loud and clear.
Let's go.
So we'll keep rolling. So I think that with A/B testing, we talked about heat mapping and we talked about looking at what people are actually doing and trying to build your A/B tests in conjunction. What I'll say is, even if you're not extensively A/B testing, any changes that you make to the website, I call those an implementation versus an A/B test. So A/B test is you test two versions. Should I do this thing? Implementation is you just do the thing. But I would encourage whichever one you're doing, still use that unified variable set. Still use that targeted goal of like, what is the fundamental thing that you're trying to accomplish? And do all the changes that you make boil down to that. Because the problem that I pointed out in the very beginning is that people are just doing guesswork. They're like, I saw this thing, I like it. This looks pretty. This stakeholder likes this visual style. This stakeholder likes this other visual style. That's what you're trying to get away from. You're trying to get away from it just being arbitrary and based on opinions and sometimes even based on outdated experiences, right? Another thing I'll share with folks is that if you look back even 5 years, the majority of companies just defaulted to monthly pricing. That was the baseline. If you go back, use Wayback. Anyone here can go in, they can go to Wayback Machine and they can go back to 2018, 2019, 2020 and look at the top SaaS brands and you'll see the vast majority of them do monthly pricing. And what do the vast majority do today? They do default annual, but broken down and displayed monthly. Why? Because a couple companies at the top started to do it. And as they got more permission to do it, because it became accepted practice, brands all want to get you on annual plans. They would love for you to be on an annual plan because there's a lot of benefits to the brand. So even though consumers would obviously prefer the flexibility of monthly, it became more just the status quo. And so more and more companies started to do it. I mentioned this example to say that you need to be careful about outdated experience. If you come and you use 2020 experience and you're like, this is what everyone does, it's best practice. It's like, well, that has changed. now.
Yeah.
And like talking about AI is the exact same thing. AI is a rapidly changing space. So the way that people talked about AI 3 years ago is going to be materially different than the way they talk about it today. And you need to be careful to not bring that older experience and apply it to 2025.
I absolutely agree with you. Whatever worked in the past doesn't work now, and it's truer in AI than it has ever been. I want to share one test that we did many years ago. So it was around the monthly and annual, and we were doing these online courses with 365 data science, and our price point was about $30 per user per month. And the single biggest thing that moved the needle for us was to try to get the people to go to annual, right? In the beginning, we were a bit shy, not confident, and we were, this is the monthly, this is the annual. And then we made this test, which was basically, showcasing annual everywhere, and we're just like shoving it down their throats. And it was, people were converting, and this increased our revenue by 60%. And this was an incredible jump for us. And we realized, okay, so this is, now we have doubled revenue almost, and this was really, really exciting for us. So we were like, wow, what more can we do? And we started digging into the data, and it turned out that most of the people, those that were not converting, these were people who they needed our product not for 1 month, but not for 1 year. They needed it for 3-4 months. And then we made a test and we introduced a quarterly plan. And this was selling like crazy. So to us, it became clear that if you're not ready for annual, you definitely need the quarterly. So this increased our revenue another 30%. And it really matters, the how long does it take for people to use your product. Maybe it's not a forever product, and so on. But
Yeah,
this one test was the most valuable thing ever.
I love you. The first is the importance of really understanding your TTV or your time to value. As organizations, we really need to understand this. SaaStr put out a study recently, like 2-3 weeks ago, where they said longer trials convert better. And it kind of made a splash because people had really strong takes on it. Some people completely disagreed. SaaStr put out this thing, and it was like, we looked at like 8,000 or 20,000, I don't know. It was a high number of tests. And they found that like longer trials converted substantially better, right? Now, the reason I share that is because the reason that a longer trial is going to work better, similar to your example of why people might need to get onto quarterly plans, is if people need a longer time period to reach their aha moment, i.e., your TTV curve is longer, right? Then you lose a lot of people during the activation phase if you just go month to month, because it's more of like there's a barrier there. So if your product requires extensive integration, if your product requires migration, or if your product just requires extensive team setup, you got to get lots of stakeholders involved. It is going to make sense that you're going to want either a longer trial, you're going to want something that goes beyond that kind of initial point. So I think that's a good takeaway for folks and a good thing for people to reflect on for their own business. What is my time to value?
Absolutely, I absolutely agree with you. This is true for our business right now, team-gpt, and our free trial right now is 14 days, but I really want it to be a bit longer because I think the time to value is a bit longer. But for the online courses, we made time to value analysis, and it actually turned out that if you don't convert in the first 10 days, it's very unlikely you're going to convert at all. It was much closer to an e-commerce business because people would make an emotional decision to buy the course. So for us, it was actually much more valuable to make it a much lower time. So the time to value was, let's say, 1-2 days. They realized they need it, and we need to log them in this point. And this is why discounts work for e-commerce and so on. I don't recommend discounts for SaaS businesses, by the way, within integrations and so on, because this is not what pushes them to buy. But it's really, really important to understand the time to value, to understand the sales cycle, and how long do you need to actually convert the people.
Yeah, no, I'm just agreeing. I'm just agreeing with you in the comments here. I think it's super important, as we've probably said a dozen of times here. Know your industry, know your space, and 100%. If you're selling courses, that is very much in the digital product e-commerce framework, which is very different from someone who's making a decision of like, I need to migrate. I need to go migrate my data over. I need to connect new data points in. That's going to look substantially different.
Can I show you one test that
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
doing right
please,
now?
please.
Okay, let's see the presentation. Okay, can you see it?
I can see, yes, I can see like inside
Cool.
your interface.
Okay, so this is our interface, team-gpt, and we were thinking about the A/B testing quite a bit, but then I found out about this idea, and there was this guy who was saying, "Listen, A/B tests on your website, they don't matter. It matters what happens inside the platform." So this was the statement. I don't think it's true, but it was an interesting statement. And I'm like, okay, why does this person think like this? And he was saying the experience on the website is different from the experience in the platform. And he said, do tests inside the platform. So what we started doing was we built this bit of the software, which we call experimental tools. And it is a bunch of features which are kind of disconnected from the main software, but we have created about 10, 15, we've tried a bit more, but these are a bunch of different interfaces, different things that we have done. Here is a prompt builder, you go through some process. Here's an image to text tool. Here's a YouTube video navigator. This, by the way, is a very cool one. You take a video. I'll just show this one. You take a video, it puts the video, it creates a summary of the video, and then the key points on the right-hand side. And then when you click one of these things, it just jumps to this bit of the video. Then you can skip through it. Of course, it didn't. Okay, this is it.
Yeah.
And you can even chat with it, right? And we have these ideas, and we're like, will this sell? I don't know. Let's test it out. And there are a bunch of them. And the question for us was, why build it? Why put it in the software if it doesn't stick with the people? So we started measuring these things, and here is which one of these do you think, Casey? So I'll give some time to the people as well. So prompt builder, image to text, YouTube video navigator, speech to prompt. These are in favorites. Maybe these are the most used. So which one of these do you think was the most successful?
Yeah. So the
Casey,
question
what
is,
do you think?
which one of those four things had the most uptake? Is that what your question is?
Yes. What do you think?
I personally would go with the YouTube video navigator.
This one. It's my favorite as well. It was created on an internal hackathon where my team so we were 20 people in the hackathon, all from team-gpt, and the team I was leading was 3 people, and we won the hackathon with this tool. So I love it. And but here are the results, Casey. All of them don't matter, but the prompt builder. There's only one which picked up. And you see this is the last 30 days. This is the last 90 days. I'll just wait for it. The moment we released the prompt builder, it kind of picked up and killed all the others. So you see such a strong signal, and especially when you have the baselines, some of them are better, but at the end of the day, people care about one of them, and it's the prompt builder. So we have this super strong signal that this is something that needs to go into the main bit of the software, and it has to become a selling point, lead magnet, go on the website. We need to start showcasing this. So we've started collecting these signals, and it's really, really useful for our product development.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think using those internal signals to then put stuff on the website that is resonant around that, I think obviously that's a smart choice. I think the prompt builder winning is very much likely tied to your customer's intent. What is the framework of what problems they come into your software to solve? My guess, based on the data that you've just shown me, is that the prompt builder is most tightly aligned with their intent moving in. So they might have all this other stuff, and we look at it and we're like, this is really powerful, this is fun. But if ultimately what they're trying to do is most closely aligned there, that completely makes sense. But that's a great tip, and this is a great takeaway for everyone listening, is if you have the bandwidth. I will say that there's differing levels of how agile development teams are. So what you've kind of laid out is great if you are in a situation where you have an agile development team that can kind of do that internal testing very quickly, and get that signal to then populate what to put onto the website.
It's I agree completely, and just want to add that if I remove this from the picture, I still see a very fragmented signal, what matters to the people and what doesn't matter to the people. And to me, it was very, very important to put these all of these on the same level over here, so that it's not a part of the system. They're on the same level. People click around them and they discover them, and they start using them. And it's really, really interesting to see this. So next step for us, we remove the prompt builder from here. We have already put it on the in the main platform. You can now you have the prompt builder here, so it's a very significant bit of the software. We remove it from tools and we continue testing. Next test we're going to do is, we believe that the intent was very important, and we believe that if we do it on the basis of jobs to be done, it's going to be much more impactful, and we're going to figure out what are the jobs to be done, which is a very important test for us. So this is the next test that we're doing.
I like it.
One more test. This one is in the beginning. I can't share any results because it sucks. But by the way, Casey, we have changed our homepage according to all your best practices. And whatever you post, we do it. So keep posting. But another test we're doing is we're testing our ICP. So for us right now, it's very important to understand who are we serving. And in this case, so we just figured out, I'll just zoom in. We figured out marketers, they love our software. We asked them a bunch of questions, and they say, I'll just share the data because I like building in public and I like sharing data, So over here in the Notion, you can see that the marketers are really, really, really using us more. So this marketing, engineering, operations, product, and design. And we saw this super strong signal in marketers. And we're like, okay, let's narrow down in this. And the question is, what kind of marketers? So we're now conducting this test where we have these 5 groups that we have identified: enterprise marketing teams, content marketers, agencies, service agencies, which they're very close, but we have difference in the usage, and e-commerce. All the other stuff we have kept the same, but these 5, they appear here. They appear here. They appear in the use cases. They appear on the pricing page. And the thing here is that what you were saying, we have this baseline, and to us the question is, how do we tie in our traffic to these ICPs? And we are now collecting who is clicking this. By the way, the pages are very much the same.
Yep.
So the pages are very similar, as you can see, but they have a slightly different messaging. Complete copies of one another with different jobs to be done. Same testimonial, but different jobs to be done down below. Even from the preliminary results, we're seeing that in a funnel of which ones of these matter, out of the 5 of them, only 2 are getting clicked. So we are seeing at the first step already a strong signal which one could be the winner. But to us, similar to Canva, it would be very important how this whole thing ties in with the rest of the journey. So
yeah,
I'll keep you posted.
I'm super excited to see what the data says. And I think it's a really good point, though. So one of the things that people struggle with is, who are we for, right? Most companies are decent at saying what they do, and they're decent at saying how they do it, but they struggle to say who you're for and who they're for. And I think an important takeaway is, and this is why testing is great, there's a lot of ways that you can chop that question. And I actually would recommend, I think a really good example of a company who does this is actually a Beehive. They're an email marketing newsletter company. If you go to Beehive's website and you look at their solutions tab on their website, one of the things that they do is that they cut it. Here, I can share my screen too if it's helpful, or you can pull it up.
Yeah, I'm looking for it, but
it's that one right there. No, it's okay. It has 2 eyes. It's weird. It's that one right there. Grow your newsletter. So go ahead and click on the solution. Hover over the solutions tab. So here's what I like about what they do. They approach it from a couple different standpoints. First off is they approach it from an objective standpoint. What am I trying to accomplish? That's the first thing. That's actually the rarest. People typically go like vertical industry. They're going by actual output. What am I trying to accomplish? Then they say, who am I? Right? And they allow you to get into that role. And then they go into the standard industry play. So I think absolutely test this. Find out what works for yourself. But I think that when you think about affinity, one of my mentors, a guy named Pat Campbell, who sold his company for $200 million, he told me something I thought was really interesting, because we were getting into this deep conversation about affinity and like how companies are scared to go too deep and say like, we're the company for SaaS or we're the company for whatever. And he said, the way we thought about it is, instead of saying we're the company for SaaS, he said, we're the company for subscriptions. And he said, we like to say subscriptions because now that applies to SaaS. SaaS is subscription, but it also applies to subscription e-commerce. It applies to all sorts of different subscription style products. And so that's part of the thinking process is, yes, you need to build affinity, but go through and test. Is it affinity based on job role? Is it affinity based on industry? Is it affinity based on your output? There can be a lot of differences there. So I think it's a good takeaway. And just like you said, use heat mapping, understand what people click on, understand those signals. And the only caveat, going again back to those traffic spikes, is understand where people come from. If you go to a big enterprise event and you see a big uptick and you're like looking at your heat mapping and you're like, here's my signal, I have this really senior buyer, but in actuality, your social followings and most of the ways you normally get are totally SMB, that could be a little disjointed. So you either run it long enough to make sure that you're getting across all those different spikes, or understand where that stuff emanates from.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. By the way, when we were doing our testing and we were doing the discovery, customer discovery, one of the things that showed, the data showed, was that industry didn't matter for our tool. So it was about the function in the company. And this was so counterintuitive for us, because everybody was saying us, which industry are you for? Are you for healthcare? Are you for whatever? And I couldn't answer. I'm like, we're for every industry. They're like, and the VCs, the investors, other founders, they're like, you have to figure out who are you for, which industry. And we figured out it's not the industry. It was the wrong question. It was like, what is significant? The question was, what should we be testing? And it was the function of the company. And this really changed the way we started thinking about the business overall. Okay, we are for everybody, every business, but for a specific function in this business. This was really key for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I think that's super valuable. Do you think, Iliya, do you think it'd be valuable to pull up, like, we haven't gone too deep on pricing pages, and I think we could pull up some examples that have been heavily tested on that might be really informative to some of the core best practices for folks. Do you think that'd be valuable to share and kind of talk through some of those principles?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me see
Absolutely.
if I
Are you
can.
gonna Okay, you
I can
go
share.
pull it up. Are you ready with it? I was gonna show Opus, which is doing the same thing that you said. They have the solutions for creators, podcasters, and so on. I think they're doing a
Yeah,
good job for who they are for. Are you
yeah.
ready?
Yeah. Go. I'll share this, and then let's hop over and then let's go check out and dig more into Opus too. But I wanted to share just a couple quick examples.
Go
Are you able
ahead.
to see? Are you able to see my screen right now?
Yep.
So I shared a case about this recently, but there's a couple things I like about how they handle this. They ran a split test, and you guys can kind of go onto my LinkedIn if you're curious, and you can see what they tested. But essentially, the idea was: do you put the $19 plan in with the other plans, or do you pull it out? Notice how they pull it out, and they have it separately here, and then they have the actual regular plans laid out here. So a couple things, and there's a couple things I want to highlight, like 3 different things here that I think are really interesting and really clever. So the first is, from a pricing anchoring standpoint, if you want people, they wanted to drive as much traffic to their 115 plan as possible, right? So by anchoring your base pricing at $55, now you're looking at a 2x price point from base, versus if they replace that $55 plan with a $19 plan, right? And then pulled the $55 plan as the one that they put up there, now suddenly you're looking at whatever that is, 7x price point. So there's this idea of anchoring. That's one component that I think is smart. The other thing that they do that I think is really smart is, notice how it says great for small businesses right here. They have these affinity components right here at the top. Another
Yeah.
company that does this great, even though it's simple, is Shopify. So I was talking to you a little bit about this separately. Iliya, we had been chatting around pricing plans, and I was telling you, like, affinity is great by saying in Shopify that basic is for solo entrepreneurs. That's really specific, right? They're saying, like, this plan is for solo people. If you're a solo person, you look at that and you can get that sense of affinity. So I think one best practice is have smart anchoring. One best practice, like Zendesk is showing, is to have Zendesk and Shopify are showing is have the affinity, great for small businesses. There's another thing that's super valuable right here that I want everyone to walk away with, which is see how it says agents available, AI agents available 24/7 to solve customer issues. This is a huge trend we see around AI verbiage, which is this. People are very worn out with the generic powered by AI as a general statement. Like, we do X, Y, and Z, and it's powered by AI. Powered by AI feels like complete filler. But what they're doing right here is they're giving a specific value claim. Why do you care about AI agents? Because they provide 24/7 coverage and support. That is very smart. And the top performing teams we see when it comes to AI verbiage are tying the AI to the specific output that they want. What do we care about AI agents? We care because it provides 24/7 coverage and you're a help desk tool, right? And so like these are the things that actually matter and are substantial. So these are just a couple examples I think are great for folks to kind of dig into and to kind of look at. I'm not saying you have to scrub even right here at the top, you see they say AI powered CX. I'm not saying you have to scrub out every use of AI, but what I'll tell you is we've looked at hundreds and hundreds of tests around AI verbiage, and the best performing tests with AI verbiage are always where it doesn't obfuscate the core thing that you do, right? Unless, I mean, if you're an AI product, it might be a little different. So note of caution that like if your core product is AI native. But in general, it's like you don't obfuscate your core value prop and the AI claims are tied to specific valuable outputs. I think that is a really valuable framework for people thinking about how to approach that. And I think there's a lot of learnings that we can pull from companies like Zendesk and companies like Shopify in terms of their layout. One last thing I'll say around this is notice how right here at the top, they do a couple things. And I actually have shared, so for both these companies, I've shared a bunch of tests. All these things that you're looking at, they've tested into, right? Like this top bar, the text they use, they've tested into it. So a couple things to note. Embedded forms seem to perform well. So if you have embedded forms, the idea is you capture people right away, and then you can take them to a progressive form experience, but you're capturing that initial person off the bat. So that's one thing that we tend to see. The second thing that I want to highlight here is notice how it says try it free, no credit card required, right? That is what I call reassurance subtext. And I find that this performs really, really well because a big question everyone has is when you say free trial, do I have to put in a credit card? Yes or no? And it's still ambiguous in the industry. So if the answer is no, you don't need a credit card, and you have an open trial, I would 100% recommend putting in reassurance subtext. It will consistently win. If you do require a credit card, then you probably that's not as significant of a variable. But if it's a no credit card experience, I definitely think that's a strong, clear best practice based on the data.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time we have tested this, if it says no credit card required, it converts better. What I would say, however, is that down the line of the journey, these people are not always the ones that activate the most, and they don't drive the most revenue, customer lifetime value, and so on. So it's very important for you to know what are you optimizing for. And the bigger brands, they want to get everybody, and then they're gonna bombard them with all their marketing and everything. If you're a smaller company looking for traction and looking for valuable clients and looking for your first customers, maybe going for the sale right away could be better than amassing these free users that don't engage with your software at all.
100%. I think I agree with it. And at the same time, I think it's a very interesting learning. Like there's a lot of companies that get unqualified people into their funnel. And part of where I start is what is your core messaging on your website, on your socials, on your ads? Like you're driving those unqualified people. So
Yeah.
one of the first questions, like there's a whole conversation about how much qualification should you do on the form? How do you disqualify people? And that's a meaningful thing to have happen. But when I sit down with a company and they have that problem, and trust me, I've talked to tons of companies that have this problem. The first thing we do is I don't even want to talk about your form experience yet. How are they getting to your form experience? If you have a large portion of traffic that is arriving, oftentimes we'll look at their ads, we'll look at like their other vectors that are driving momentum, and we'll say, the real problem is you need to stop spending $10,000 a month on you're running completely unqualified traffic from these Facebook ads or from these whatever ads. Let's go deal with that first, right?
Yeah.
And then as you get better and better, you massage the messaging, you massage the overall layout of your website to make sure that it speaks to that. Like a good example, Asana, which I've also seen on your website, has like a lot of these like security things. Hey, we do SOC 2. Hey, we have like blah, blah, blah. They're specifically trying to target a more mid-market and enterprise customer that cares about those specific safety, single, SOC 2, authentication, GDPR, all of those. So they, because of that, they put in a bunch of that messaging. And hopefully the signal there is, this is the type of customers we work with. If I see a website like Asana that has tons of stuff for enterprise customers, says we work with 85% of Fortune 100, they go all this stuff about big market. If I'm a small solopreneur, hopefully I should be aware of that and be like, hey, this means that this is maybe not the right solution for me.
Yeah, and I want to add to that just to make it a bit more confusing that we have it, but now it's serving a different purpose. Our clients, marketing agencies, they're serving enterprise grade clients, and they need to be enterprise ready as well. So the agencies themselves, they don't care about it, but since their clients care about it, the agencies care too. So it is nuanced, but yeah, overall you have to understand your market very well before doing the A/B tests and learning from them. Casey, we
Awesome.
have 2 minutes.
We
Yeah.
only have 2 minutes, so we'll let it. I know we asked for any questions. Doesn't look like we have any pouring in imminently. So I guess, Iliya, is there anything on your end? Do you have any parting questions?
Yeah, I wanted to tell one tiny story that I met this guy recently, super smart person, and I told him, hey, we're doing this. He's an investor in our company, and I said, what do you think about our software? And he said, I came to your website and I saw what you're doing, and then I opened your website in incognito, and it said the same thing. This means you're not A/B testing, and this is wrong. You should be A/B testing all the time, and you should be learning all the time. And ever since, we've been doing it. So this is my parting message to everyone. I think this is helpful for any business that has sufficient traffic and super important to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great message. And I think, again, encouraging folks to test, but test with intent, build with intent, implement with intent, try as hard as you can to step away from the opinions and try to have data as a foundation. I mean, really, again, that's what DoWhatWorks, like that's why we existed, is we saw what was kind of broken in the A/B test, that people were just making decisions based on personal opinions. And we tried to move that towards more of a data focus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Casey, we
There's a
have a
lot of,
question.
yeah, there's a lot of great platforms that can help you in this. So you can do testing through A/B testing through things like Webflow. If that's where your website is built, there's companies like Optimizely that allow you to do testing. There's quite a few different core like digital experience platforms that facilitate that. So some of it might depend on where your website is actually built. Like I said, like if you already have your website, say built on Webflow as an example, then like do it through that. Like that just makes a lot of intuitive sense. If not, there's a lot of other platforms that can help you like execute the specific A/B testing of like, I want to send 40% of my traffic here, 60% of my traffic here. So yeah, there's a handful of options.
Yeah, I found this ThickPie. I really liked them because they were cheaper than everything else and they were very easy to use. Today, we are A/B testing actually through split testing on a CDN level through Cloudflare, because many of these platforms were making our website so slow because of the A/B testing, that we started doing it. When you hit the website, it just splits you before it has loaded anything, and then we do the manual data crunching in Google Analytics. Depends on the complexity of your test, actually. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And there, again, there's a ton of digital experience platforms that can execute it. So depending on where you're at, those are three. It sounds like that's another one in ThickPie that can get to that. So lots of ways you can approach it. And just as a clarifier again for DoWhatWorks, like we don't run any split tests. We provide the data that informs the best practices. So you can use literally any platform and have something like DoWhatWorks that informs like why you make those choices based on a data foundation. So that's just to give people clarity there, where we're not actually running any tests on our end.
Casey, it has been an absolute pleasure. I had a lot of fun. I learned a bunch of stuff, and I'm super grateful that you came on this webinar. Thank you so much, and I really would love to do it again.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was a lot of fun. I always like getting into data and talking through best practices. So thanks again for having me. And I hope people walked away with some learnings.
Thanks so much, and have a great day.